Hello and welcome to another episode of Laptop Retrospective, and today I have a bit of a treat here. So this is the ThinkPad P14s Gen 3. This was released in April of 2022 and is probably one of the newest machines that I've had the opportunity to look at in quite some time. This thing is a beast. And it's got a bit of a story behind it, at least this one very specifically does. And that has to do with, and if you're following me on any of the social media out there, you'll have seen a picture of this up close. And that is an impact crack right here. And you can see it kind of runs along here, and there's a very faint one that comes here. And the cool story about this is despite of this crack, there's no damage to the display. And I wanted to start the video with that because there's a lot of conversation about how thin a ThinkPad has gotten over the years and how that is somehow a sign of a product's durability. And one of the big things that we have to push back against is that earlier in life, displays were much more fragile. I know this. I have collected many of these computers and reviewed over 100 of them over the course of this channel. And I can tell you with great authority that they had to make these displays and the top cases thicker to protect those sensitive displays. But as displays got more flexible, there's some looser tolerances in terms of what they can actually withstand before they get damaged. You can actually get away with making this thing thinner. And the fact that you can crack the back case and not damage the display, I think is just a testament to that. So, back to this machine. The ThinkPad P14s Gen 3 came in an Intel and AMD variant. This is the Intel variant, if you couldn't tell by the vPro sticker here in the bottom left-hand corner. I have to say, this is probably one of the snappiest machines that I have ever used, but it's also one of the very first machines I've ever used that has P and E cores, and I think some of the hype is real behind that. Now, let's dive into the specifications that these things would be equipped with. There is a lot of display options. These are all 14-inch displays, and they're all 16:9 aspect ratio. The first two displays that are available are 1920 by 1200s. They're the 300 nit display. They've only got an 800:1 contrast ratio and 45% color accuracy NTSC standard. Now, you might say, well, that's still not that bad, but when you listen to the other options you have available, yeah, it makes them less desirable. There is a 400 nit, 1000:1, 100 sRGB, which to me is wonderful. Nice color accurate display. If you want touch, you can get a 500 nit display, same resolution, same color accuracy, same contrast ratio. Or if you really want to step it up, there is a 2.2K, which is a 2240 by 1400 display, only 300 nits, but 1500:1 contrast ratio and 100% sRGB. And this is a low blue light TUV eye comfort display, so there's all sorts of other stuff going on there. I should mention that the 500 nit that I mentioned earlier is a privacy guard display, so you kind of need that extra brightness for it to go through. And then the real big display, the 3840 by 2400, is possible to get with touch. 500 nit, anti-reflection, anti-smudge, 1500:1, and 100% DCI-P3. So that's Dolby Vision, HDR, 400, X-Rite, all sorts of color technology. In other words, you can use these things for some really color accurate work, which is good given that it is a workstation. In terms of CPUs that shipped with this, in terms of Intel, there were 2 i5s and 4 i7s available, and I'll list them up here on the screen here for you. All of them are running Intel Iris Xe graphics. There was an NVIDIA T550 4GB card that was available. This machine does have it. It's not a gaming card, I'll tell you that right now. Like, this is designed for workstation applications, very much so. It does not support ray tracing, for example, and it's more equivalent of a 2000 series NVIDIA card. So could you game on it? yeah, you could probably push it into that area. But if you want to think about what it's really comparable to, it's more comparable to a Radeon Pro Vega 16, which is an integrated solution offered by AMD. But in terms of some of the scores I read online, that was the closest equivalent. If you were going to game with it. If you're doing workstation tasks, perfect. No problem. RAM in these has either 8 or 16 soldered to the board, and that gives you a maximum of 40 or 48 with a 32 gigabyte stick. We are dealing with DDR4 3200 megahertz. Few other things that are worth noticing are all the options. So up here at the very top of the display, we had either no camera, a 720p camera, a 1080p camera, or a 1080p with an infrared Windows Hello camera. So if you see two witness holes up here at the top for the infrared, you know beyond a shadow of a doubt you are running a 1080p camera, and that's really good information when you're buying these things online and the seller may not list all the specifications of the machine. So if you see those two holes, you know that you're good to go with Windows Hello. A couple other things to note: Bluetooth 5.1, Wi-Fi, all sorts of connectivity is possible through WAN cards. We are supporting 4G LTE with those cards if they're available. And some of these will actually ship with the antennas already wired into them, so you just need to drop in the actual WAN card if that's what you choose to do. Many other options like NFC, fingerprint readers, which this one has in the power button, were available. The keyboard, regrettably, did come as either backlit or non-backlit, so check for the pictogram, as you know, on ThinkPads to make sure that it actually comes with that. No sense in buying it without. And your SSDs was served up by a M.2 2280, and that's all you got. So you're not going to be really doing any RAID solutions with this. Let's go ahead and do a quick tour of the ports on this device. We'll start on the right-hand side here. We have a smart card reader. We have USB-A, and this is going to be 3.2 Gen 1, and a Kensington lock slot. Along the back, we have the nano SIM card tray for our 4G LTE. And then on the left-hand side, we have our Ethernet jack, two Thunderbolt 4 ports, one you would use for charging, HDMI, USB 3.2 Gen 1, and a headphone microphone combo jack. And along the front, we have absolutely nothing. So like I said earlier, this thing took a beating and it's still going. If the next owner of this wants to, they could certainly replace the lid here. And the P14s does share many parts with the T14, so you might be able to find one of those that would be completely interchangeable. Now, let's go ahead and slide this over to the other camera and do a quick look on the inside of the machine. So we're going to flip this onto its back. I've got my trusty screwdriver kit, which I reviewed on the channel a little while ago. I will point out we do have the reset hole there if you need to use it for anything. All these screws are captive, as we would come to expect. I'll just use a simple pry tool up in the top corner here. And just like that, we're on the inside. It looks like this protective shield got moved a little bit. That should be lined up a little better than it currently is. There we go. That looks much nicer. All right. So we have this 2280 NVMe. That's not factory. That's a replacement one, of course. Our battery here is the 51 watt hour, or the 52.5 watt hour variant, so the larger battery. Under here would be the WAN card if it was installed, which it is not. We do see that it is pre-wired for antennas. So the antennas are already there, you just got to drop the card in. That's always nice to see. Being Intel, they have soldered the Wi-Fi card onto the board, unfortunately, so you're not replacing that. On the AMD variant, those are generally socketed. So if that matters, go AMD. We have a nice big cooler here. We have it touching two chips. One, of course, is going to be the CPU. The other is going to be the NVIDIA GPU. It's warning us that this is hot. No kidding. And we have a pretty decently sized fan. That is quite large. But you would kind of expect it to be. So if you think about that, that's really all the motherboard that we have on the inside. It looks like we have a daughter board here for this USB port. And then everything else is on the same one. We do have our CMOS battery connector underneath the main battery. We can always tell because of the black and red wires disappearing underneath. Dead giveaway there. This appears to be the power for the fan. The only RAM slot that we have is staring us in the face here, which is good. That means that we don't have to disassemble the keyboard to get to the other RAM slot, because there isn't one. Alrighty. So there really isn't a whole lot more to see here. So I'm going to throw the cover back on and we'll do ourselves a little bit of a boot test. All right, here we go. All right, as you can see, we are in. This thing is very speedy. It is the i7 1280p, and it is running 32 gigs of RAM, so not quite the full complement that it would be capable of, but certainly a respectable amount. Now, given that the RAM slot is already occupied, and it's not a 32 gigabyte stick, that means that there's 16 on board and 16 in the slot, which means we could upgrade this to the full 48 if we wanted to. Now, these machines are still holding their value. If you wanted to purchase one of these, the lowest ones that I've seen are around 800 Canadian dollars. So they're still commanding some pretty respectable prices, and that makes sense. These things are very beastly machines, a lot of power, more power, quite frankly, than I would need, and it's one of the reasons why I'm not pursuing this one, even though it is really tempting. If I needed a very powerful laptop, this one, despite its battle damage, would be a very attractive and appealing option, especially at that price point. However, when I am mobile with a laptop, I don't really need workstation capability. But if somebody did, not a bad price for the hardware that you get. Some might be disappointed that it doesn't have RAID solutions in terms of storage media, that it doesn't have 2 RAM slots, and those are definitely points deducted against it. But the P14 is more, especially the S, pardon me, the P14S has always been kind of the T14 on steroids, and I think if you look at it through that lens rather than a pure workstation lens, because if you do want the pure workstation experience, you're going to go with like the P15 or the P14. You're not necessarily going to go after the S variant. At any rate, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed that quick look at this little machine. Again, I think the battle damage is a great story. Really reiterates and hits home that these machines are able to stand up to the rigors of the modern business world and are worth your consideration. If you have any questions or if you've used one of these machines, leave them in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.